We are temporary tourists on this one planet, convinced that its wonders exist for our entertainment. This is a profound misunderstanding. This world is not a resort. It is a minefield, an intricate system where beautiful displays are often just the visible edge of a lethal process. We have cataloged 15 of these natural traps, phenomena that look like miracles but are engineered by physics we barely comprehend. A mysterious glow that rises from the deep sea, the violent collision of molten lava and cold ocean. We see a spectacle. The planet is simply running its programs. These moments are a delicate balance of forces, a perfect temporary alignment. But what happens when that alignment breaks and the machine fails? Let's start with the deception. Nature loves illusions, and the 10-minute phenomenon in Yosemite is the best proof of its calculating nature. It's a spectacle that requires a perfect conspiracy of physics. First, the time must be right. The last 2 weeks of February. Warm air must rise, colliding with the ice-caked granite of the Sierra Nevada. This triggers the melt, feeding the ephemeral Horsetail Fall, a stream of water that only exists for a few weeks a year. It cascades down a sheer 1,600-foot drop. The stage is set. Then comes the light. As the sun sets, it must hit a hyper-specific angle on the horizon. No clouds, no haze. The light beam has to slice through the valley and strike the waterfall. And only the waterfall. The rest of the mountain falls into shadow. For a brief window, the water catches the last red-orange wavelengths of the day. It becomes fire, a river of lava, for just 10 minutes. This isn't magic, it's a brutal equation. Not enough snow in winter? No waterfall. A sudden freeze? No meltwater. A single cloud in the west? The light is blocked. The entire spectacle depends on a flawless alignment of variables that occurs for a few minutes out of an entire year. One variable fails, the show is over. After 10 minutes, the angle shifts and the fire turns back into simple, cold water. But where an illusion of light lasts only 10 minutes, a deception off the coast of Mauritius works around the clock, pulling sand down into the abyss. From the air, it looks impossible. A vast underwater waterfall, tearing a hole in the ocean floor. The visual is a lie. This isn't water, it's sand. The entire island sits on a shallow oceanic plateau, and powerful currents act like a relentless machine, constantly scraping sand and silt from the banks. They push the sediment towards the edge of a colossal drop-off, a sheer cliff leading into total darkness. The fall is 4,000 meters, straight down. It is a permanent submarine avalanche, a silent river of sand pouring into the void, a geological conveyor belt that looks like a black hole sucking the island into the depths. And day after day, the sand keeps pouring into the dark. While sand can pull an island into the abyss, in Antarctica, submersion means something else entirely. It means death. Down here, nature has created a weapon of pure ice that kills at -2 degrees Celsius. The process begins on the surface, where the polar air freezes the ocean, but ice cannot hold salt. As it forms, it pushes out a super dense hypersaline brine that is far heavier than the water around it. This cold, heavy liquid begins to sink. A jet of lethal cold plummets toward the seabed. As it falls, it freezes the less salty water it touches, forming a hollow sheath of ice around its path, a brinicle. You can almost hear the dull, muffled crunch as the ice tube grows, extending like a living tendril. When this icy finger touches the bottom, it doesn't stop, it spreads. A creeping web of death that advances across the seafloor like a self-guiding missile. Anything too slow to escape is caught. Sea stars, urchins, they are trapped, frozen solid in their tracks. It's a beautiful, elegant process that ends in absolute crystalline death. The entire hunt, from the surface to the seafloor, can be over in just 5 hours. The first sound is a supersonic roar as the mountain tears itself apart, but that sound is almost immediately drowned out, overwritten by the sharp electric crackle of static discharge on a planetary scale. And while water freezes into a weapon in the deep ocean, on land, chaos heats up, 700 degrees Celsius. This is Guatemala's Fuego volcano, and it is not just erupting, it is manufacturing its own electrical storm. The phenomenon is called a dirty thunderstorm. It begins when billions of superheated ash particles are blasted into the atmosphere. Each fragment of rock and glass, heated to over 700 degrees, collides with its neighbors in a plume of violent friction. This constant rubbing strips electrons away, creating a massive separation of charge. The entire volcanic plume becomes a gigantic temporary battery, a battery made of fire and rock. The ground develops one charge, the sky another. When the electrical potential becomes too great for the air to resist, it equalizes the only way nature knows how, with a flash of lightning. A single eruption can produce hundreds of distinct electrical discharges. Nature can organize pure chaos into a machine of terrifying efficiency. But it doesn't begin with a roar. It begins with silence. The air grows heavy, a suffocating atmospheric pressure that feels like the sky is holding its breath. This is the herald of a supercell. A normal thunderstorm is a frantic, short-lived event. It chokes on its own exhaust, dousing its warm, rising updraft with cold rain. But a supercell is different. It is engineered. Its internal engine, a rotating column of air called the mesocyclone, tilts the entire structure. Hot, moist air is vacuumed in from one side, fueling the ascent. The cold, heavy rain is ejected miles away on the other. No interference, no self-destruction, a perfect loop. This allows the structure to grow, unchecked. An 18-kilometer tower of cloud, it punches through the troposphere, scraping the edge of space. Inside, winds spiral over 150 kilometers per hour. It is not just a storm, it is a self-sustaining, autonomous system. A power plant in the sky that builds itself from atmospheric chaos and then unleashes it. And then, the engine moves on, leaving absolute stillness in its wake. From the overwhelming power of atmospheric engines, we descend to the microscopic level. In bays like Puerto Rico's Mosquito Bay, survival is not a show of force, it's a chemical scream. To the human eye, it looks like magic. A paddle disturbs the surface, and the water erupts in an explosion of electric blue light. It's a liquid fire that is completely cold to the touch. But this isn't a spectacle, it is a biological panic button. The water is saturated with single-celled organisms called dinoflagellates, packed at a density of up to 700,000 per gallon, a microscopic megacity. The mechanism is a high-speed chemical reaction. Any physical disturbance triggers it. An enzyme, luciferase, strikes a light-producing molecule, luciferin, an emergency flash. This burst of bioluminescence is a desperate defense strategy designed to startle a predator or illuminate it for an even larger hunter to see. It is a living burglar alarm. For us, it's a beautiful light show. For the microbe, it is a mortal threat signal. The glow is a direct bioindicator of a healthy, balanced ecosystem, one that is critically vulnerable to human interference and light pollution. A single disturbance triggers a chain reaction across millions of cells. They flash in a wave of silent panic and then go dark, leaving the bay's inhabitants exposed. From the chemical panic of microbes, we move to raw physical violence. In Hawaii, this crisis is born from the collision of two fundamental forces separated by over 1,000 degrees Celsius. The first sound is a deafening roar. It's the sound of the Pacific Ocean boiling on contact. Basaltic lava at 1,100 degrees hits the cold seawater, and the thermal shock is absolute. The water doesn't just evaporate, it detonates into steam, creating a toxic cloud known as laze. This is a plume of hydrochloric acid, superheated and laced with microscopic shards of volcanic glass. One breath shreds the lungs. As the lava shatters from the shock, black glassy fragments pile up, extending the coastline. But this isn't peaceful creation, it's chaos. The entire process builds a fragile illusion of solid ground. These new deltas are a lie. They are built on a foundation of loose, unconsolidated rubble hiding an incandescent core. With no warning, these newly formed shelves of land can collapse back into the boiling abyss. On the surface, Earth wages war against itself. But above the atmosphere, the planet faces a constant, silent bombardment from its own star. An enemy firing from 150 million kilometers away. It begins with a violent eruption on the sun. A cloud of charged particles, a solar wind, is hurled through the vacuum of space. It travels for days, sometimes reaching speeds of 800 kilometers per second. Our planet is a tiny bullseye in an interplanetary shooting gallery. Then, the stream of radiation hits the shield. This is the magnetosphere, an invisible force field generated by Earth's molten iron core. It deflects the lethal particles, funneling them down magnetic lines toward the poles. Here they finally slam into our atmosphere. The violence is completely silent, but it is a storm of pure radiation. These lights are not a gentle celestial dance. They are the visual proof of a planetary defense system under fire. The collision with oxygen atoms at an altitude of 100 kilometers creates the brilliant green glow. Higher up, above 200 kilometers where the atmosphere is thinner, the impacts generate a deep, ominous red. Each flash is a single high-energy particle vaporized in a collision measured in milliseconds. But this defense is a constant 24/7 operation, a relentless barrier holding back a fatal dose of radiation that would otherwise sterilize the surface and strip away our atmosphere. It is the only thing protecting our satellites, our power grids, our entire global communications network. Total failure is unthinkable. If these lights ever go out, it's because everything else already has. While Earth's magnetic shield repels attacks from space, on the surface, a different kind of defense is underway. In East Java, the forests are building their own local defense against humanity through communal survival. Outside the borders of the Jawatin forest, cleared land and agriculture. Inside, an autonomous oasis of resistance. The primary soldiers in this silent conflict are the Samanea Saman trees. Many are over 100 years old, with massive, gnarled branches that stretch horizontally, not vertically. They create a sprawling, interconnected canopy just meters above the ground, a living ceiling. This structure is not for decoration, it's a foundation for a fortress. On these branches, entire ecosystems take hold. Epiphytes, ferns, and orchids latch onto the bark, transforming each tree into a self-contained hanging garden. But this isn't parasitism. The roots of the epiphytes don't drink the tree's sap. They are anchors, using the ancient wood purely as a scaffold to reach for sunlight. This symbiosis creates a unique microclimate, a humid refuge that becomes a sanctuary for biodiversity in a region dominated by farms. Each tree is an arc. This isn't a fantasy landscape, it's a strategy, a fortress built by plants to weather the assault of modern agriculture. Hundreds of years of evolution and cooperation standing against modern bulldozers. Nature's ability to adapt can create geological absurdities. In the vast steppes of Kazakhstan, a clash of internal heat and brutal external cold gives birth to a monster, a volcano made of ice. The physics are a paradox. Deep underground, immense artesian pressure forces thermal water toward the surface, but the air it meets is a wall of cold, minus 30 degrees Celsius. The collision is instantaneous. Water erupts from the ground. It hits the freezing atmosphere. It crystallizes on contact. Droplet by droplet, layer by layer, this process builds a hollow cone of ice, a structure reaching 14 meters high, the height of a 4-story building, all while the core continues to erupt, spewing dense plumes of steam and freezing water into the sky. This is not just a geological freak show. It's a perfect terrestrial laboratory. Scientists call the process cryovolcanism. It's a mechanism identical to what we see on Enceladus, the ice-covered moon of Saturn. If a fragile pocket of liquid water can shield itself with a fortress of its own making here on Earth, what then is hiding under the frozen shell of a distant world? Drop by drop, the hollow ice cone continues to spit hot water into the frosty sky. Building an ice shield is an act of active defense, a fortress against the cold. But in the Arctic highlands of Lapland, the trees have a completely different strategy. It's a strategy of submission, of extreme passive resistance. The phenomenon is called taiki. It begins when supercooled moisture from fog and low-lying clouds hits the trees in sub-zero temperatures, freezing instantly on contact. This isn't a delicate frost. This is a relentless buildup of rime ice, a visual record of the brutal Arctic winds. Layer by layer, the casing grows thicker, heavier, until the weight is overwhelming, several tons, on one tree. The living wood is forced to perform like a super strong tension spring. You don't hear a sudden snap, but a slow, grinding groan of wood fibers stretched to their absolute limit. The trunk bends, contorting into an impossible arch until its crown is pinned to the frozen ground. This isn't a sign of weakness, it's the highest form of structural engineering, where survival means yielding to a force you cannot possibly defeat. The ultimate resilience is not rigid armor, but the ability to bend under an unbearable load so you do not break. The forest stands silent, a gallery of white monsters. Each one is a living organism trapped in a tortured pose, waiting for the thaw of spring or for the final catastrophic crack of its own spine. From the passive endurance of frozen forests, we leap to the scorched earth of southwestern Morocco. Here, survival isn't about bending, it's about breaking the laws of physics. This is a scene that defies logic, a herd of goats, perched in the branches of a tree like a flock of oversized birds. This isn't an anomaly, it's a calculated response to a world with no food on the ground. The secret is in their hooves. Forget the hard, clumsy image of a farm animal. This is a biomechanical masterpiece. Each hoof is split into 2 flexible toes that can splay and grip, with a soft, leathery pad that molds to any surface. A living climbing shoe. We see one approach a trunk. It tests a branch. The sound of dry wood cracking under its weight. Then it ascends, locking its hooves onto fragile limbs, balancing a body built for the ground. 10 meters high, the height of a 3-story building. They are chasing the fruit of the argan tree, a small bitter prize in an otherwise barren landscape. But the story doesn't end with a meal. After digesting the fruit, the goats excrete the hard, undigested seeds, often miles from the parent tree. They didn't just hack gravity for a snack, they became the single most important foresters in the entire region. While a lone animal might climb for its life, the open ocean operates on a different logic, a brutal collective mathematics. The only rule is to hide behind your neighbor's body. When a school of sardines is cornered by predators, all escape routes are cut off. Panic triggers a transformation. Thousands of individuals compress into a single shimmering sphere, a bait ball functioning as one superorganism. But this is not an act of coordinated teamwork, it's a cynical calculation known as the selfish herd theory. Every single fish desperately pushes towards the center of the mass, using the bodies of others as a living shield. This frantic individual struggle creates the illusion of a perfect, unified dance. The coordination is possible because of a biological sensor network, the lateral line. This organ runs the length of the fish's body, detecting the tiniest shifts in water pressure from its neighbor's movements. The reaction is almost instantaneous. A signal ripples through the school. They synchronize in milliseconds. Chaos becomes geometry. From a distance, it's a mesmerizing silver sculpture. Up close, it's a high-speed game of statistical roulette, a churning meat grinder where the prize is not getting eaten first. The perfect defense holds for a moment, a wall of shimmering bodies against the dark blue. Then a predator strikes, tearing the sphere apart. While some species sacrifice their neighbors to survive the next 5 minutes, this creature embarks on a 4,500-kilometer marathon just to avoid freezing to death. This is the monarch butterfly, and its journey is a paradox of scale. For an organism weighing less than a single gram, this is the human equivalent of circling the globe on foot, without food. The flight path begins in the icy autumn winds of Canada. It ends in a specific grove of trees in central Mexico. The question is not if it will arrive, but how a brain the size of a pinhead computes a transcontinental route with zero deviation. The answer is a marvel of biological engineering, a system more reliable than any modern drone. The butterfly's brain integrates two separate navigation instruments. The first is a time-compensated sun compass located in its antennae, which calibrates its flight angle based on the sun's position in the sky. As the day progresses, the internal clock adjusts. But when clouds obscure the sun, the backup system activates. A magnetic compass. Specialized proteins sensitive to quantum effects allow the monarch to literally see and follow the Earth's magnetic field line southward. Precision targeting, not random drift. The result is a mass convergence. Millions of individuals, guided by these invisible forces, land on the same cluster of oyamel firs their great-grandparents left months before. They blanket the trunks, a living quilt of orange and black. The collective friction of a million wings is their only shield against the cold mountain nights. This fragile biological engine is responsible for pollinating a vast portion of a continent. Its entire mechanism, a system whose health is now in question. While animals fight for survival in milliseconds and seasons, the planet builds its own mineral armor, a process unfolding over millennia at a stable 35 degrees Celsius. Deep underground, water is supersaturated with dissolved rock, held in a liquid state only by immense geothermal pressure. But then it breaches the surface. The pressure instantly drops. An invisible, violent chemical trigger is pulled as carbon dioxide gas hisses into the air, leaving a sharp mineral scent on the water. The chemistry is unforgiving. With the gas gone, the water can no longer hold its dissolved load of calcium carbonate. It is forced to precipitate. Instantly, liquid becomes solid. Water petrifies before your eyes, depositing a new, paper-thin layer of travertine stone. This isn't a gentle sculptor. This is a chemical eruption, frozen in time. A single cascade built layer by microscopic layer across 10,000 years. The migration routes and mineral terraces you've seen are not just beautiful images, they are terabytes of data, reassembled for this expedition pixel by pixel. To take you into these inaccessible worlds, we had to digitally reconstruct them. This was a reverse engineering of reality. We integrated real-world footage with advanced digital simulations, training an artificial intelligence to rebuild the physics of a planet at war with itself. The mechanics of a herd in panic, the chaotic chemistry of water turning to stone. This isn't just a film, it is a forensic analysis. Every frame of simulated motion required titanic processing power, translating the raw code of nature into a visual you could follow. We didn't just point a camera, we rebuilt the world from its own brutal blueprint. After witnessing these systems of survival and destruction, which planetary force did you find the most relentless?